Hey everybody, this is the last video in the Source, Trauma, and the Information Age series. Let's talk briefly about Ted Hearn. He studied at Yale, he's currently teaching at USC, he's a Pulitzer finalist, which I mentioned in the Anthracite Field series, he's only 37, and he's a part of the Sleeping Giant Composer Collective. Sleeping Giant is a group of 6 composers who met at Yale and who compose loosely post-minimal music. Noteworthy members include Ted Hearn, obviously, Grawemeyer winner Andrew Norman, and Pulitzer finalist Christopher Cerrone. Ted Hearn describes himself like this: composer, singer, band leader, and recording artist Ted Hearn draws on a wide breadth of influences ranging across music's full terrain to create intense, personal, and multi-dimensional works. The source certainly seems to fit the bill. Hearn himself describes this piece as an oratorio. Quick question: what other composers have used genre titles that have spiritual overtones and historical references? What is the effect of using this kind of language? Hearn describes the content of the work like this. The subject is Chelsea Manning, the U.S. Army private who infamously leaked hundreds of thousands of classified military documents to WikiLeaks in 2010. With this in mind, we might say that this is a response to political trauma of being in a nation that used enhanced interrogation techniques on our presumed enemies. Can you think of any other works that responded to political trauma? I immediately think of sound mass and holy minimalism composers in Eastern Europe, and pieces like Quartet by Michael Gilbertson that respond to Donald Trump's election. This situates the source in a rich history of art responding to political trauma. The simplest musical example is Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, but thinking outside of music, Francisco Goya's The 3rd of May 1808, depicting Spanish resistance to Napoleon Bonaparte's forces, and Pablo Picasso's Guernica, a Cubist depiction of the Axis bombing of the town of Guernica, are both representations of political trauma that have entered the public consciousness. To rise to the ambitious level of its subject matter, the source is incredibly eclectic and very postmodern. Hearn says, the music, like the text, draws from diverse sources. Auto-tuned recitatives, neo-soul ballads, icy string solos, and moments of cracked-out musical theater are peppered with, and sometimes structured around, samples that bridge sonic worlds. Hearn has stated that he has an interest in the contemporary art song or the crossover pop song, which is also apparent in the source. But let's try thinking about this music in a different light.
Oh, the shark.
Alex Ross wrote in The New Yorker that Hearn's music holds up as a complex mirror image of an information-saturated mass surveillance world and remains staggering in its impact. We live in the information age, where we're constantly being bombarded with media and entertainment, and an instant dopamine hit is only a click away. Do you think it's possible for us to be oversaturated and bloated with information and content? On some level, Ted Hearn is asking this question. Think of Oh the Shark from the source. The overwhelming collage of quotations makes it impossible to appreciate any one of them. We're only able to take in the whole writhing mass. Can you think of any other examples of oversaturation of information in music? One easy example is the music of Brian Ferneyhough and New Complexity. There's an impossible amount of information on the page. It simply can't be processed. Another example might be sound mass compositions, where the conglomeration of many small data points coalesce into a churning wave of sound. And related to sound mass is granular synthesis. This is music which creates timbres out of tiny, infinitesimal particles of sound. John Oswald's album, Plexure, samples 1001 different pre-recorded songs. This is like Oh the Shark from the source, but exponentially more erratic and less referential. Free Sound by Matthew Shlomowitz uses only sounds that were available for free download on the internet, creating a staggering array of low-quality sounds arranged into a composition. Noise music musicians like Mertz Bau and Japa Noise strive for a complete saturation of the harmonic spectrum, creating an overwhelming and deeply unsettling experience that borders on violence. As our world grows more and more fragmented, pieces like these will inevitably become more common, as composers attempt to grapple with the oversaturation of our globalized and technologized world. To recap what we just discussed, the source is a response to both political trauma and oversaturation. Some composers have responded to oversaturation with maximalism, or trying to reflect that overstimulated sensation by maximizing information, such as New Complexity, sound mass, granular synthesis, and noise music. Other composers have responded to oversaturation with collage, such as Plexure by John Oswalds or Free Sound by Matthew Shlomowitz. Here are a few questions for you to consider in response. What connections do you find with past pieces or movements? How have other artistic disciplines handled the rise of technology? What are the effects of the rise of technology and the internet information age on the daily lives of composers? Here are 3 hot takes for you to consider. Electronics have ruined concert music. Streaming services have made concert music irrelevant. Classical music is a dying art. Alright, that's it for the source, trauma, and the information age. Thank you guys for watching. I look forward to hearing what you think, and I'll see you soon.